Institute for Museum and Library Services for sponsorship and support to KDLA. And I'd like to go ahead and kick it over to our speaker for today, Sarah Patterson. She is giving the presentation on short reads, big impacts in small packages. Thank you, Sarah.
Thank you, Tricia. Great. Well, hello, everyone. Just making sure I can see my file. So welcome to our webinar, Short Reads, Big Impacts in Small Packages. So my name is Sarah Patterson. I am the Continuing Education Consultant for the Kentucky Department for Libraries and Archives. And like Tricia said, we are sponsored by IMLS, which is the Institute of Museum and Library Services. So I'm happy you're all here today. Hopefully we'll learn a few things and maybe have some discussion. So our training specialist, Tricia, is here with us today. She'll be happy to answer any questions or comments you have if you put them in the chat. So let's get started. All right, so we're going to discuss four main things today. So the focus of our lesson is to understand the role of short reads in supporting diverse literacy needs, and then we're going to talk about how to curate and promote high-interest short reads in the library. And then we're going to look at some programming ideas that incorporate short reads with real-life examples across different types of media. And then we're going to focus on exploring outreach and collaboration opportunities with public school teachers and support staff, as well as community members. So to begin, I think we need to first define what a short read is. It's probably a term that you've rarely or never heard before. So let's talk about what short reads are. So to start with, short reads are brief, engaging texts that are usually under 1,500 words. Excuse me, sometimes they can be a little bit longer, but the point for them is to obviously be short, right? And these short reads must deliver a complete idea, story, or concept in a compact format. They can be fiction or nonfiction. They include articles, short stories, poetry, excerpts, even infographics can be a short read, as long as whatever you're reading is the whole story, a complete idea. So short reads are important because they provide a bunch of different skills. So for youth, short reads can support skill building and confidence and reading stamina, especially for our emerging reluctant or multilingual readers, our new to English readers. For adults, they offer accessible, time-efficient content that fits into, like a busy life, and it will support developing literacy skills, especially for our new adult readers. So whether we use short reads in schools or libraries or community programs, we can use short reads to provide meaningful reading experiences for people of all ages and backgrounds, and that includes even our babies. So let's first talk about short reads in supporting diverse literacy needs. We have a wide range of patrons with varying literacy needs, and let's see how we can use short reads for each of those different people. So adults, we're going to start with adults. So short reads are an especially valuable resource for our adult readers who might face barriers to reading longer media, such as having limited time or emerging literacy skills, or difficulty sustaining attention over long periods for whatever reason. Maybe they have kids running around, maybe they have a 15-minute lunch break. Whatever reason, short reads are perfect for these types of people. So these readers include many individuals. We could include adults that are returning to education after years away from formal learning. We could include adults who are learning English as an additional language, workers who are balancing multiple jobs, caregivers who are managing their family responsibilities, people who are just in general very busy with limited free time. So for many people in those particular groups, the idea of having to commit to a lengthy novel or dense nonfiction can feel really intimidating impractical and discouraging. So we want to be able to give them something accessible. Short reads offer accessible, low pressure entry points into reading. Because they're so short, this allows adults to get the experience of a full story, article or essay, just in one sitting, which lets these busy adults feel like they've completed something. They get that satisfying sense of completion and a confidence boost because they've finished a text. You know, you always hear adults say, oh, I just don't have time to read, but our short reads bridge that barrier for our busy adults. And having that sense of accomplishment for our busy adults can help readers build positive associations with reading, and that will encourage them to engage more frequently, both in the library and with longer media when they have time. From a literacy building perspective, short reads can play an important role in skill development. They allow readers to focus on targeted practice, and these are adult readers, like building vocabulary, improving their reading fluency, strengthening their reading comprehension, all without a large cognitive load of having to track a complex plot or a dense argument in a story or multiple characters over days or weeks that it might take to read a longer story. When the content comes from everyday life, like news articles, workplace documents, recipes, personal essays, or human interest stories, short reads can support functional and real-world literacy, which makes reading relevant and immediately useful, which in turn, again, reinforces the motivation to want to read longer things when they have time. So now that we know why short reads are important for adults, let's look at how to integrate them in our libraries. So for librarians working with adult learners, short reads can be curated to align with our readers' specific needs and interests. So for example, if you are working with someone from workforce development, if you are working with a patron who's in workforce development, you might want to provide brief professional articles, workplace safety guides, interview tips, all in a shorter format. They might not want to read the OSHA 2024 manual or might not have time or the skills to read that, but they could read a 1,500 word pamphlet on workplace safety instead. So if you are working with patrons who are involved in civil engagement, they might want short reads that are short, clear explanations of the local voting processes, or short reads on their local community resources or local issues that affect their community right where they're at. If you are working with patrons who just want to connect with their communities in some way, they might enjoy short reads on cultural enrichment, which might look like short fiction or essays or poetry from some diverse voices or local voices that reflect their own experiences or that will broaden their perspectives. If you have lifelong learners coming into your library, they might enjoy short reads that are a little bit of everything. So you might want excerpts from history or science or travel writing that encourage these patrons to be curious, but don't involve a large time commitment. So integrating short reads into adult services, whether you're doing this through book clubs or literacy tutoring or ELL, English language learner conversation groups, or digital resource promotion, that tells our patrons that your library values all reading journeys, no matter their pace or their starting point. And the materials we provide to our adults with these busy lives who are looking for short reads shows them that we are still respecting their realities of their adult life, but also providing meaningful, high-quality content. So short reads aren't just stepping stones to longer works. We need to look at them as legitimate formats in their own right, which can sustain lifelong reading habits. So we do have short reads for struggling adults and new adult readers. A lot of times we have adult readers coming into our libraries and we just assume automatically that every adult that comes in is reading at an adult reading level, which is not a great assumption. The library is for everyone. So here is what we can do for our struggling adult readers and our new adult readers. So what we want to look at is curating a high interest, low level short reads collection for struggling or new adult readers. And our goal is to build something that is not only engaging, but also dignified. So the first step in building a high-low collection for adults is curation. So we want books that have adult themes and compelling plots, or short reads that have adult themes and compelling plots, but that are written in a way that's approachable without being childish. So there are a couple publishers out there, Grassroots Press, New Readers Press, and Orca, produce high interest, low readability titles that are great for struggling teens and adults. These high-low books are a lot harder to find for adults. So this is something that in your reader's advisory notebooks you might want to write down when you find them in your collection, so that you have them at hand. So short story and essay collections, narrative nonfiction, even certain magazines can work really well as a high-low item for struggling adults and new readers, while still being short reads. Make sure that you have variety, like mysteries, romance, sports, historical fiction, alongside practical nonfiction that an adult might find useful, like financial literacy or local history pieces. The design matters. Make sure the physical design doesn't look any different than mainstream material, and it doesn't look childish. So once you have the collection, you want to promote your collection without patronizing. So this is where language and branding in our libraries makes all the difference. We will not use labels like low level or remedial. I don't know why you would think to do that anyway, but avoid that. But use interest-driven titles instead. Like, you could market these as quick reads for busy lives, or short reads, big impact, or read in one sitting in your library. And then market them for their appeal and convenience, not the skill level that they're written for. So when you do this, you want to also promote and outreach at the same time. So make sure that promotion extends beyond your library. You can create social media posts for your library's website, focusing again on the enjoyment of the short read rather than the simpler text. Make sure that you reach out to ESL classes to make sure that your collection is reaching people who might benefit most from it without patronizing them. And then you can also consider hosting a short reads book club, which gives everybody in your community, whether they are powerful readers or struggling readers, the ability to join a communal book club. Everyone reads the same short piece, and then the conversation becomes the focus rather than the page count or the difficulty of the text. And then, so make sure that your staff are trained also, right? We want our staff to know the titles that we have in our library that are high-low interest short reads. That way staff can normalize the collection rather than having to ask themselves, oh, where can I find a book for a struggling reader that's a grown-up? So make sure that your staff are trained. Make sure that they frame suggestions around plot and voice and theme rather than ease or level. So something like, if you like fast-paced mysteries, here's one you can finish over a weekend, is a very positive and powerful way to keep the conversation stigma-free. You can also do you might like bookmarks or offer books in multiple formats. And then every person who comes through our door, even our struggling and new adult readers, will feel welcome. So let's look at our youth. Generally, when we think of short reads, we might think of our youth with shorter attention spans, but again, short reads are powerful reads for everyone. So for youth, short reads are flexible tools that support struggling and reluctant readers because they offer manageable, engaging content with a high return on investment. So texts that are short stories or brief nonfiction articles or essays or poetry, they're intentionally concise and shortened, and this allows readers to complete them in a single setting. This gives our new youth readers a tangible sense of accomplishment, and that's really important for students who might normally feel overwhelmed or defeated by longer novels or dense nonfiction. When they experience the full reading arc, which means the beginning, the middle, and the end of a story, quickly and effectively, our students are internalizing the story structure faster and easier and gaining confidence in their reading abilities. And we really want that for our youth. So So our youth, again, just like our grown-ups, short reads reduce cognitive overload. It lets our students focus on the meaning of the text without losing their momentum. When they have to read something over multiple days, some of our students can get kind of lost, or our youth can get kind of lost in that. And then students who are working on improving their fluency and vocabulary and comprehension can reread a short read multiple times in the same time that it might take them to read one longer, denser story. So repeated reading is a research-backed strategy that reinforces new vocabulary and deepens understanding of what our youth are reading. So short reads also resonate strongly with our digital natives and our time-conscious students, who are generally accustomed to getting their information quickly in visually appealing bursts. So many of our youth are used to scrolling through social media, watching short-form videos, or just scanning headlines, and this has shaped how they engage with content. So when a student is used to reading in fragments, a 300-page book sometimes can feel overwhelming, whereas a 5 to 10-page story feels like something that's more manageable that they can climb. So for librarians, this presents an opportunity to actually connect better with the reading experiences to the formats that students are already embracing. So how to integrate short reads for youth? Because they require less time to complete, short reads can actually be integrated into busy library schedules, busy school schedules. We have two different choices here. So if we look at schools, we can integrate our short reads during advisory periods or independent reading times. Often at schools, students will only be given 5 to 10 minutes for independent reading. This is the perfect time for short reads. We can also collaborate with teachers, school librarians, and support staff to integrate short reads, and we'll talk about more on that in just a little bit. At the library, so we can use short reads to create creative, accessible programming and displays. So for example, you could create quick grab displays, which is like rotating selections near the circulation desk or the library entrance that has 10 to 15 titles that you might be able to read in under a half hour. And again, I want to emphasize that this is more than just short stories. So we'll look at specific examples soon. For homeschooling students or as a collaboration with schools, you could create lunchtime book clubs where at the library you could have informal groups of students discussing short stories or articles that they've read that day, whether you provide them ahead of time or they're at the library. In your library, you can also have just right collections that have high interest, low level short texts for students, which ensures that your content is both accessible and engaging. For our digital natives, we can provide digital short reads like articles from Newsella, features from the New York Times Learning Network. We have narrative nonfiction from Smithsonian Tween Tribune. And then those digital short reads mirror the quick content that students are already encountering online, but in a more structured, educationally valuable format. You can preload those articles onto library tablets and leave them on a display. You might want to label them something like Catch Up on the News, That's Just for You, or some other rhyming catchy title that you might be able to use. And then you can also promote short reads in digital reading challenges, such as like read 3 short stories this month and win a prize kind of thing. So there's lots of ways to integrate them, and we will look at a programming idea a little bit later too. So our English language learners. English language learners, or ELLs, for these people, short reads provide a structured, supportive, and confident building way to engage with English texts. Because short reads are so concise, our ELL patrons get a manageable linguistic load. It will give these readers a clear beginning, middle, and end. It's a complete story arc without overwhelming them with pages and pages of unfamiliar vocabulary or complex syntax. The shorter length lets our ELL students process linguistic meanings in a single setting, which again reduces cognitive load and fatigue and allows them to comprehend better. So many digital and print formats, many digital and print platforms feature short reads like Newsella and ReadWorks often have bilingual options, which is fantastic because it gives ELL students the flexibility to encounter the same content as their native English-speaking peers, but it will support their comprehension in the way that they can come to understand it. In some cases, these students can actually read the text in both their home language to build background knowledge and then reread it in English to focus on vocabulary and syntax. And that scaffolding helps our ELL learners make meaningful connections without losing the flow of the narrative. So let's look at how we can integrate that. So librarians can adapt short reads in several ways. I'm a big supporter of bilingual collections. So librarians can curate shelves or digital lists featuring short stories, folktales, nonfiction in both English and the student's first language. And you would need to look at the language needs of your community. Spanish obviously is a big one, but if your community has a lot of Indian natives who speak another language, you might want to look at that sort of language. Just make sure you're looking at your community when you're curating a bilingual collection so that it's useful for your community. You can also integrate physical media with your text. So you can pair short nonfiction text with real objects. So for example, you might have a display on oceans in 2 different languages, and you might put seashells out at the same time. You might have a display on pirates in different languages, and you might put out coins or treasure boxes or pirate maps. So combining the physical with the text is an option. You might have audio assisted reading, either online or as recorded audio with physical media, which will let our students listen and follow along with the text. And then specialized reading groups is another way to integrate short reads for our English language learners. So you can have our ELL students read a short text in their home language and then discuss the content before reading the English version, which allows them to build confidence and context for what they're reading. And then do consider creating a dedicated ELL learning center with short reads. You can have a rotating display with image-based vocabulary cards that tie into that month's featured short read selections. All right, so let's look at some real-world examples of what a short read is so that we can make it more concrete. So short reads include all kinds of things, and we're going to look at 12 different examples of short reads, including specific titles and where you can find those different types of short reads. So let's start with anthologies. These are collections of short stories, essays, and poems all wrapped up in one book. They're a great way to sample a wide range of voices or topics without having to commit to one long read. They're like a literary buffet. You can try a little bit of everything. And then there's online article databases, which are curated websites that offer short texts with built-in supports like leveled reading, audio, or annotation tools. These are really good if you are a public librarian working with schools or school libraries. And they're also great if you're a public librarian working with adult learning centers. A lot of times these have reading levels that you can actually adjust. They're shorter reads with high, medium, and low reading levels. So that's really great. Newsela covers a huge range of subjects at different reading levels, and the New York Times also does as well. And then one of my personal favorites, flash fiction, are very short stories, usually under 1,000 words. But again, they still cover a complete narrative arc. They are quick and engaging, and they pull people in very fast. So we are going to look a little more at some specific examples. So if we look at anthologies, I just picked 3 that were kind of different. So DK offers a ton of different children's anthologies. And the one I chose as an example is The Mysteries of the Universe, Discover the Best Kept Secrets of Space. We have Never Whistle at Night, which is an Indigenous dark fiction anthology. I just read that one recently. It's fantastic. And then Weirdscapes, an otherworldly anthology. So these are just large books with shorter reads in them. Lots of different short, I don't want to call them short stories because they're not always, but anthologies are great if you want a bunch of short reads on a specific topic. So article databases, well, KDLA doesn't endorse any specific app, platform, or program. Here are 3 that I found that are free to use for your patron. ReadWorks has articles about pretty much everything, and you can tailor what you're reading to different reading levels, and they're all short stories. Sometimes there's poetry. The New York Times has the Learning Network, and News in Levels allows you to read different stories that are short and in different accessible ways. The New York Times and News and Levels also has quizzes and vocabulary and writing prompts if you need that. If you might be working with a school librarian, for example, that's also an option. So here is flash fiction. I wanted to look at this as an example so that it became more clear. So flash fiction refers to very short stories, again, that offer that complete narrative arc, and they engage people very quickly. So I've presented here two examples of extremely short but well-known flash fiction. The first is Baby Shoes, and the entire piece is for sale, baby shoes, never worn, and we attribute that to Hemingway. It's a 6-word story that's haunting, and it works as flash fiction because it tells a complete narrative arc that requires the reader to fill in the emotional narrative. The second piece is called The Dinosaur, and it's a famous 7-word story by Augusto Monterroso. So translated, the story reads, when they awoke, the dinosaur was still there. And it works as flash fiction because you can create a million stories from just that one sentence. And this story also relies on the reader's interpretation. Was the dinosaur in their dreams? Was the dinosaur there before they fell asleep? Is the dinosaur real? Also, you have to look historically at these pieces. In this case, the dinosaur may refer to the government dictatorship that the author had been under when he wrote this. And this story is purposefully, famously difficult to translate. Some people translate this as when he or she awoke, the dinosaur persisted, and persisted changes the meaning of the story. So just in these two pieces of flash fiction, we can see the possibilities, the programming possibilities that we can use for our native English learners. We can see the programming possibilities that are available for our ELL learners. Imagine a short form reading group that discussed the dinosaur with both English language learners and native English speakers. That would be really great. So, but flash fiction doesn't have to be this brief, right? There are a ton of examples of stories under 1,000 words that pack a lot into a brief setting. And if you look in this purple box here, I included, down here, I included some different websites, including 100wordstory.org, which is an online archive of stories that are exactly 100 words, and a flash fiction magazine website, which produces daily new flash fiction pieces under 1,000 words. And both of those websites are great places to look when you're ready to start doing short reads in your library for programming. All right, so let's look at some more examples of where you can find short reads. So graphic texts and infographics, these are all about strong visuals paired with just the right amount of text, which makes them perfect for visual learners, reluctant readers, English language learners. So I want you to think about one-page comics or clever charts or visual poems or science and history infographics that you might see from Scholastic. Those really bring kids in, and they can also provide a lot of information in a visual way. We also have our high-low books, which we talked about earlier. These are high-interest, low reading level books that are written in short, simple language. They're fantastic for struggling readers, including our new adult readers. They're short, they're straightforward, and they are engaging. Current publishers that I can think of right now are Saddleback Educational Publishing and Orca. Both of those publish both adult and youth high-low books. And then magazines. These are the ultimate grab-and-go reading material. They are current, they are varied, they are available at all sorts of reading levels. You can find magazines for children like The Week Junior, Time for Kids, Nat Geo Kids, Ranger Rick. You can find magazines with short reads in them for grown-ups like Reader's Digest, which is still being published, the Smithsonian, National Geographic. There are even relevant short works in grocery store checkout magazines that our patrons would find interesting and relevant. And each of these gives readers a mix of articles and interviews and opinion pieces, lots of visuals, so there is something for everyone in those. So here are some examples that I found that have been recently published. So Graphic reads. We are currently experiencing a golden age of graphic novels, and there are a million I could choose from. But I wanted to look at some unique examples. The first one I found is called Funny Girl, and this is really great as a short read because it's actually a collection of short stories, but they're all in graphic novel format. So it's basically an anthology of graphic novels, which is pretty unique. And there's more examples. That's just the first one I could find. Then there are also graphic reads for people who have to read a traditionally long, somewhat dry text, like Greek myths, like the Odyssey. And then classic stories have been redone as graphic reads, like Wrinkle in Time in 1984. And then we also have graphic novel collections, which is a little bit different than something like Funny Girl, because these include entire books, such as King Arthur and Robin Hood and Tom Sawyer, all in one graphic novel. Are examples of high-low books. These are a little trickier to find, again, especially for adults. But these are books that you might want to put on a list. So when you have someone come in as an adult or an older teen or a young adult who says something, usually they'll say something like, I hate reading, but I need to read, or I don't read very often. Sometimes that's code for, I really want to read, but I'm not very great at it. These are the types of books that you might want to suggest to them. So we have 5 examples here. And so, for example, the B Team, which is right in the middle, is a lighthearted story about former criminals who are trying to do the right thing, but they don't quite get there. And then I also want to point out books like James Patterson. So these pop fiction thrillers like James Patterson, Michael Connelly, Lee Child, these books are written generally at a 5th or 6th grade reading level, which is not advertised, but that's what they are. And the chapters are only 1 or 2 pages long. So these are the perfect books for newer adult readers because it really builds confidence in readers when you only have to read, you could say I read 6 chapters. Well, that may have only been 12 pages, but that's perfect for our struggling readers or just someone who doesn't have a lot of time. And then there are lots of magazines that specifically focus on publishing just short reads. So Spoke Long Quarterly specializes in flash fiction. All their stories are under about 1,000 words, and they have a literary focus. And then the website for Smoke Long is excellent because you can not only read the stories online, you can listen to them. So you can have our ELL learners listening to stories at the same time that they are reading. Excuse me. And then we also have this white, this is their logo, this white picture here is for Brevity Magazine, which is also online and is famous for flash nonfiction, so 750 words or less, and is a great place for short form storytelling. And then we have One Story, which is fantastic because it's a magazine that publishes one short story at a time, and then they mail that story to you. They also have a teen version. So as a library, it might be something worth looking into as a library subscription. If you peruse your catalog and discover you have almost no short reads, you might want to consider a subscription to something like One Story. And then we have Ellery Queen Mystery Magazine and Fantasy and Science Fiction magazines. These are genre-specific publications that focus specifically on short reads. And they are published 6 times a year. So these are all options, these magazines, that you could consider purchasing for your patrons. All right, let's move on to other platforms where you can find short reads. So we have micro-learning platforms. These are basically digital apps or tools that give you content in short, focused bursts, usually between 1 and 10 minutes. They're perfect for busy adults, people who don't have time or patience for long study sessions. We have podcasts with transcripts. These combine audio storytelling with a written transcript so you can read along while you listen. This is a great option for people who need to read as they listen, and also for people who only want to listen. You don't have to read the transcript. So lots of options for everybody. And then poetry is pretty self-explanatory. What some people don't realize is that there are actually entire books that are written in poetic form, which makes them shorter, but they will have the same impact as if they're written as a narrative. There's poetry that rhymes, poetry that tells a story, poetry for all age levels. Sometimes poetry can be a hard sell to your library patrons, which is where a library event or program or display or contest might come in handy. So let's see specific examples. So our micro, and again, I want to say KDLA does not promote any one specific micro learning platform. These are just some examples that you can use as a starting point. So we have Duolingo podcasts, which right now are only available in French or Spanish for English, native English speakers, or English podcasts for native Spanish or Portuguese speakers. But those are short 3 to 5 minute stories in those languages, French or Spanish or English, that you can listen to wherever you listen to your normal podcasts. We have Blinkist, which is subscription-based that your library can look into offering to their patrons. These are summaries of nonfiction books and podcasts. So they take huge text and they condense them down into 15 minutes. Khan Academy has evolved massively and now offers bite-sized reading, among other things, for all ages, youth through adults. Then there's also Khan Academy Kids, which offers short read formats for pretty much any device you might have. AFAIK, however you want to pronounce that, AFAIK, stands for As Far As I Know. And that is a really neat learning platform, which is free, and it connects users to all sorts of different short reads and short learning in various disciplines. You can learn anything you want, and it takes about 10 minutes to learn all sorts of different things at a time. So that's a great platform that you can promote to your patrons. Our podcasts with transcripts for our younger readers, you might look at Brain On and Smash Boom Best. And then for our older readers, we have NPR's Shortwave and Life Kit and The Moss. And these are all short format learning platforms, podcasts that you can listen to wherever you listen to your podcasts. Most of these are also available on the respective YouTube channels, and users would be able to turn on subtitles and read along as they listen. And then we have poetry. So I chose to pick poetry that most people might not see very often. So we have poetry comics, which are poems in graphic novel format, and each poem is 2 to 3 pages. There is also, if you look on the other side, a series called Poetry for Kids. It can be a little more difficult to get your hands on. They are now republishing them with new covers, which is really nice. But these collections have beautiful illustrations, but they contain the full classic original poem as a book. Other titles are like Shakespeare, Robert Frost, Walt Whitman. And then we also have books written completely in verse, which provide complete narrative arcs in short bursts. So Long Way Down is a common suggestion for teens. It's very engaging. It's got so many awards on the cover, you can barely see the title at this point because it's just been lauded so much. We also have Inside Out and Back Again and Split Tooth, which are 2 examples of novels in verse for adults, which again are a little harder to find. So you might want to put your novels in verse for adults in your Reader's Advisory notebook so that you have access to them when a patron comes. All right, so let's look at how to curate and promote high-interest short reads in your library. So building a strong short read collection involves curating content across all genres. So first, you need to know your audience. Make sure you understand your community. Look at your circulation stats, listen to what your patrons are requesting, and consider local community interests. This will help you choose short reads that will actually get picked up by your patrons. Make sure you're aiming for variety, not just in topics, but in formats too. You want to make sure that you're mixing your print and your digital, visuals and audio, so you're covering lots of learning styles and preferences and reading skills. You want to make sure that your collection represents diverse voices and experiences, making sure to cover your whole community, even niche topics, because you want to connect with as many readers as possible. And short reads don't really take up a lot of room, especially if they're digital. So there's no harm in trying to include as much representation as possible. And then you also want to make sure to keep things fresh. You want to rotate your collection, your short reads collection regularly, especially if you have displays. Feel free to tie in seasonal themes, current events, trending topics, and that will keep your patrons curious and coming back for more. Evaluating short reads. So when we're curating short reads, it's really important to start with a clear plan for what makes something a quality addition to our collection, just as if you were curating any collection. You want to look at your collection development plan to make sure that what you're choosing is diverse, a quality piece of media, and also accessible media. So we want to look for works from reputable publishers, content that's been cited or fact-checked, and has details that feel authentic and true to the context. That way our readers, it builds confidence in our readers about our curating abilities. We want to make sure that short reads are accessible, but not that they're dumbed down. So accessible does not mean dumbed down. Short read language should be clear and engaging, but the ideas still need to have depth. And brevity is great, but it shouldn't come at the expense of substance. For example, a 2-page article can be just as thought-provoking as a full-length book if it's written out well. And that's what's going to keep patrons coming back for our shorter reads collection. If they feel that it's dumbed down or that it has no substance, they're going to stop reading them. Engagement is big. Short reads don't have the luxury of being a slow build. They need to grab the reader right away, whether that's a striking image, a strong visual layout, a shocking fact. We want to make sure that our readers are hooked right away. And then consider pilot testing. That might mean putting your short reads in a display or having a book talk, but make sure that you're checking circulation numbers and getting casual feedback from your patrons about whether it's worth adding more or whether you need to try something a little bit different. Do not be afraid to use your patron data. Pay close attention to your usage analytics. So it's not just about collecting numbers for a report. You're trying to understand your community a little bit better, especially when you're doing something new. So by looking at your circulation stats, your digital checkouts, your program attendance, you might see patterns starting to emerge, especially just for your short reads. So maybe a certain type of nonfiction flies off the shelves. Maybe your magazines are going so quickly you can't keep them on the shelf. Maybe your e-audiobook versions are more popular than the print copies. So make sure that you're using your patron data and your analytics to have data-driven insight on your collection. And then also make sure you're checking in with your patrons. So speak with them. Many people come into the library for more than just materials. They're coming for reading and literary connections, and readers love talking to other readers. So start promoting your short reads collection, and then use those as conversation starters with your regulars. You can ask them, did you see our new display? Have you tried our new collection? And see what they like and don't like. And then you will be getting valuable feedback to pair with your quantitative data. And that will let you know where you need to go from where you've started. All right, so let's look at some specific programming ideas. I have some programming ideas here for kids and teens and adults and families. So this idea is called Story Snacks, and it's only 20 to 30 minutes, so it's much shorter than a normal children's program. This is specifically for kids. It's perfect for young attention spans, and it lets kids try out all kinds of different literary elements. So what you would do is you would introduce the theme for the week. You would do a very short read aloud. Make sure to get all kinds of things. You can do short picture books with not as many words. You could do folktales, poetry. You could even do an excerpt from a chapter book that has a strong standalone scene. Make sure you're doing interactive reading with the kids, especially if you're using short reads, because the reads are so short. It lends itself to doing more interactive reading, pausing to ask questions, letting kids guess what happens next, having them join in on repeated phrases. And then you want to do some sort of connection, again, keeping everything quick and fast and short. So you might have them draw their favorite scene or create a mini book cover for the poem that you just read. They might act out a scene. You might all decide together how the plot would be different if something changed in the story. And then, of course, a snack. So you can do a themed snack if you're allowed to eat in your library, or you can create a story snack bag that they can take home that includes the short read that you just read, if that's allowed, or a story snack bookmark, and then they would be able to track which story snacks that they attended. For our teens, we have Flash Fiction Fridays. which is a weekly program where patrons, your teen patrons, can gather together to share ultra short stories. So we're going to build our sessions around stories that are 1,000 words or fewer, which is quick enough to read in a single setting together, but rich enough to spark discussion. So this is a program that would work both virtually and in person, and you can adapt it to teens and adults. So the goal here is to give your teens a welcoming, low-pressure space to enjoy and discuss and create flash fiction, while also making it a low commitment for our teens. Sometimes book clubs are just overwhelming for teens. They don't want to read large novels, so this is a great option. So what you'll do is you'll introduce the theme of the week, maybe try an icebreaker if you're into those. You will read and discuss some flash fiction stories that are related to the theme of the week. Then you will have your teens do a writing sprint, no more than 15 minutes. You don't want to give them a lot of time because, again, this is supposed to be flash fiction, something very quick and easy. You might want to give them a prompt. Some teens won't need a prompt. They'll just do their own thing. And then you want to allow them to share and feedback. Make sure that positive feedback is the only thing that they're hearing. It's just to keep the momentum going, to keep encouragement up. And then you want to wrap up. You might share theme-related reading lists of flash fiction. You might give them a take-home prompt for the next week. You might consider doing themed series like Mini Mysteries Month or Sci-Fi Snapshots. You might even consider publishing a Flash Fiction Friday zine, which is a self-published magazine, of your teens' work to showcase their talent. Make sure that that's available for all library patrons to see, or you could create a bulletin board of their work as long as you have their permission. You can put that on your website. Teens love seeing their work showing up in the library, and flash fiction is so accessible for everyone that that's something that anyone can be involved in. All right, and then we have the Short and Sweet Book Club for adults, and you'll see that this program duration is only a half an hour, which is like 4 times shorter than the normal book club meeting, because again, we want to keep things quick and brief. So the Short and Sweet Book Club is designed for busy adults who still want a rich literary experience but have zero time. So instead of tackling a full-length novel, this program idea focuses on high-interest, easy-to-read short stories or flash fiction or engaging nonfiction articles, something that a patron can read over a coffee break or a lunch break. And each book club meeting is only 20 to 30 minutes, which means librarians are going to have to move fast and keep the energy high and the pace quick. So start with a introduction, maybe provide a little information on the author or the setting or the time period. Give everyone 5 to 8 minutes to read. Make sure that the works you are providing are, again, short. You can have meetings in person or virtually. You'll want to encourage participations to share their reflections, but you're only going to give them 8 to 10 minutes. And then you're going to wrap it up. You're going to give everyone the next week's selection or tell them where to find it. Maybe give them a thought to ponder related to the reading, and you're going to end the session. Because it's only a half an hour, grown-ups, adults can join on their lunch breaks or their in the evening when they have busy families. A half an hour isn't a lot of time to have to commit to something, so this is a quick way to get people involved in book clubs that might not be able to commit to a 2 or 3 hour book club once or twice a week. And then our families, this is kind of exciting to me because I love contests, but you can do a yearly flash fiction contest for your families. So make sure to promote it, right, through library newsletters and local schools. Work with your school librarians. At your kickoff events, you're going to introduce short reads. A lot of people have never heard of them. You might read one out loud to families. Make sure you discuss what makes short reads so special. And then you're going to launch your contest. You are going to let families make their own flash fiction story. And I would give them a deadline that's 2 to 3 weeks out. Any longer and families start to forget or they get busy and they just don't do it anymore. Make sure you're providing a simple submission forms that families can write on directly or attach their submission to. You'll want your submission form to be digital and physical. Post it everywhere. Your website, your social media, have hard copies in the library. Just keep the energy up for the contest for those 2 or 3 weeks, and you should have plenty of submissions. And then to offer support and to keep interest high, you might want to offer additional workshops where families can drop in once a week They might have flash fiction available to read as examples, and you might have writing tips and prompts for them at these workshops. And then once the stories come in, make sure that you have a judging panel that's made up of all kinds of people, library staff, community members, and you'll have to have submission guidelines. Make sure that you're selecting lots of different winners based on creativity, originality, following the instructions, that kind of thing. And then you're going to want to have an awards and celebration event, because everybody loves those. Read the winning stories out loud. It shouldn't take too long because they're short reads. Make sure you hand out fun prizes. You can showcase the entries from your families in a display or a digital online gallery. Everyone loves to see their work in the library, so make sure to display those. And then make sure you keep the momentum going. Thank your participants, share their work, encourage families to keep exploring short reads. You can provide lists for them for the year, maybe have smaller reading goals or contests throughout the year with your families. So let's talk about outreach. So you want to make sure to build your partnerships. And I have a list here of all kinds of different people that you can partner with. You can talk to your local educators, your teen patrons. You can host surveys, have suggestion boxes. You can leverage resources from publishers and vendors. Many send newsletters, catalogs, or previews that highlight trending short reads. Make sure you stay connected to them. You can partner with your digital platformers, your influencers, and your bloggers. Make sure to talk with micro-influencers. Those are people who maybe they're smaller, but they have a loyal following, especially if you have these people in your local community. Once you found them, work with them to promote your new collections and your library in general. They might be able to give sneak peeks behind new collections or new ideas that you have coming up. And then don't forget about your newspapers and local magazines, even if they're not sought out after as much. So you can collaborate with your school librarians. Public libraries and school library groups that collaborate together are just fantastic. So don't overlook your school librarians and your teachers as well in your district. So you want to make sure that you're collaborating with everybody. You can map your short reads in your library to curriculum standards. Just make sure that you're reviewing the goals before you do that. You can offer co-teaching opportunities, and this is especially important for our public schools that do not have librarians. You can offer to run reading workshops that fit into a class period, and short reads are perfect for that because they're short. You can create themed text sets for our school teachers and our school librarians who might not have time to do it themselves. This includes reading kits for interventionists. And then you can provide teacher professional development sessions, 15, 20-minute sessions on what short reads are and how they can get digital access to free short reads for their students. And then you can integrate your short reads into instructional support. Connect with the intervention teams at your local schools if you are a youth librarian. Short reads work really well in literacy settings because they're brief and they're focused. And then these short reads fit into intervention blocks where you have both limited time and limited attention. Librarians can work with educators to co-teach if the teacher is open to that, or if the school is open to the public librarian coming in, especially again if the school does not have a librarian. A lot of our school librarians are very overworked and might welcome something like this, a public librarian coming in and co-helping in the library to provide short reads for their students. So just make sure that you're monitoring and adjusting as needed to make sure that you are still, as the public librarian, relevant and helpful to your local instructional support and school libraries. All right, so let's wrap it up. We talked about a lot in a little bit of time. So as a wrap up, let's look at our key session takeaway points. So first, short reads are powerful. They meet readers where they're at, whether it's a busy adult looking for a break, a reluctant teen reader who is more willing to try something short, an English language learner who will benefit from an accessible text. We looked at a wide range of formats from flash fiction to high-low books to magazines, different micro-learning platforms and podcasts, and all of these different formats offer unique ways to connect with different audiences. So we want to make sure that when we curate a short reads collection, we are looking at all kinds of formats. We looked at different curation strategies, making sure that we're aligning our curation with our community needs, our curriculum needs if we're working with our libraries in the schools. We're making sure that we're diversifying our format, and we are making sure to seek out content that's relevant and engaging. When we promote our short reads, we're making sure that we do that through theme displays or reading challenges, and that whatever we're doing is a short reads for all ages. And then we want to make sure that we emphasize the impact of short reads to our library patrons in the community, to our schools, our public schools when we work with them. We know that short reads strengthen literacy skills. We know that short reads build reading skills, and they have a strong impact. So so we want to make sure that it's not just about adding more materials to our library shelves, right? We want to make sure that we're letting the community know that these collections are positioning our library as a key literacy leader with our new collections. And then in the few minutes we have, we want to promote this. So microlearning and short reads is what we all just talked about. So now we're going to talk about what we have in the works here at the CE section. So do you not have the time to watch 1 hour-long webinars? We have the program for you. So we are going to start a program called CE Shorts, and CE Shorts are going to be 15-minute micro-learning opportunities designed just for public librarians, brought to you by the KDLA's Library Development Branch. So each month you're going to get 2 new videos posted to our YouTube channel, and these are going to be perfect to listen to anytime, anywhere, because they are going to be audio only. This means that you will be able to queue them up on your mobile device and walk away while you are still learning. So if you listen to both CE Shorts each month, you'll earn a half CE credit towards your recertification, and that gives you the chance to rack up 6 credits a year. And since our certifications go for 5 years, that's quite a lot of credits. So the first set of CE Shorts are going to be recorded in September. They will be edited and posted by the end of September. So public library staff can begin looking for their first listening opportunities starting October 1st. To earn credit for CE Shorts, staff will put both shorts on one learning activity report, and you can just write CE Shorts for September 25 or CE Shorts for November 2026 as an example. You will turn that in with your annual summation each year, and you'll receive credit for microlearning. So we are going to have all kinds of topics, like ways to match readers with the perfect book, no-cost program ideas you can launch tomorrow, handling challenging patrons. So even some historical topics that might be of interest to you, the public librarian. So don't be surprised if you hear from me about these, and I might even ask you to speak about something awesome you are doing at your local library. So go ahead and start looking for that at the beginning of October. And that's all. So today's webinar was short reads, big impact in small packages. I hope you all have enjoyed listening to our webinar today. As a reminder, KDLA is funded by the Institute of Museum and Library Services, and we thank them for their support. You can reach any of us here at the CE office at the emails that are on your screen.
Thank you so much, Sarah.